Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive, this time into the world of American versus British English.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and we're going to go beyond just the basic, the stereotypical stuff that you always hear about.
Right.
And really kind of dig into like the subtle, the sneaky little differences that even trip up like advanced English speakers.
I know, because I'm one of them.
Yeah, like even, people who are like, very, very fluent in both. But there's still some little things that are like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So we've got 15 words and phrases
Okay.
to guide you through these sort of tricky transatlantic conversations. And trust me, you will be surprised by some of these things.
I'm ready to be surprised.
Okay, good. So what I think is interesting is that it's not just like vocabulary swaps. It's like it kind of gives you a peek into the history and the culture and even the humor of both countries.
Absolutely. Yeah. They really do reflect those deep cultural differences and sometimes even values.
Yeah, like almost like a window into like a different mindset.
Exactly.
So let's jump right in with our first word. It's one that's kind of been popping up a lot lately in both American and British English, but with a slightly different vibe. And that word is
bespoke.
Bespoke.
Yeah. You've probably seen it like in marketing materials and stuff, but how does it actually differ across the pond?
Well, in both American and British English, it basically means the same thing, which is custom made, made for a particular customer.
Right.
But in the U.S., at least, it still kind of has that connotation of something really exclusive associated with like luxury goods and services.
So like a bespoke suit or like
a bespoke suit, a bespoke car.
Right, like a Rolls Royce or something?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So it still signals like luxury prestige and really that attention to detail.
It's like it's become a marketing word almost.
It has.
Yeah.
It has. And it's becoming more common.
Right.
But it still has that sense of like, this is special.
Yeah. This is not just off the rack. This is something really unique. Whereas in British English, it's much more commonplace.
Interesting.
You can use it for anything that's customized, whether it's a wedding dress, kitchen cabinets, you name it. Our source even gives the example. She ordered a bespoke wedding dress from a designer in London.
Wow. Yeah. So it doesn't have that luxury kind of vibe to it.
Not so much. It's just like, I had this made for me.
Yeah.
Just for me.
Interesting. Okay. So the same word can have these subtle like shades of meaning depending on, where you are in the world.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. I like that.
It's fascinating, and it makes you realize how much context matters when you're communicating.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit to a word that I think often trips people up. Mm-hmm. And this is like the classic queue versus line dilemma.
Ah, yes, the great transatlantic queue debate.
Right.
One of those fundamental differences that just seems so simple, but they reveal so much about those cultural perspectives.
Right.
So in the U.S., you stand in line, which to me kind of implies a more individualistic approach, like everyone's just focused on their own thing, getting it done. Whereas in the U.K., you queue.
Right.
And that suggests orderliness.
Right.
Shared social etiquette, like we're all in this together. We're all going to wait patiently for our turn.
And it's almost like a cultural institution in Britain, the concept of queuing.
Absolutely. It is. It's deeply ingrained in British society. You queue at the bus stop, you queue at the grocery store.
Right.
You even queue at the pub.
Yeah, you better queue up.
Yeah, and there's an unspoken understanding that you wait your turn. It's just part of their social fabric.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, is that reflected in other aspects of British life? Is that that whole like sense of order and politeness and
for sure.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, let's move on to a word that describes a feeling we all know too well, but express it differently. Utter exhaustion. So in American English, we might say exhausted, but our British friends have a wonderfully evocative word for this, and that word is knackered.
Knackered. Oh, yeah. I love that word.
It's a good one, isn't it?
It is. It's so descriptive. It goes beyond just being tired.
Yeah.
It really conveys that sense of being completely drained, worn out.
Right, like you've just hit a wall.
You've hit a wall, you're done. Yeah. And while Americans might use exhausted in a similar way, knackered has this playfulness to it. Like almost like they're poking fun at their own fatigue.
Right.
Which is very British.
Yeah, it's a good one. And our source uses the example, I'm absolutely knackered after working a double shift.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think perfectly captures that.
It does.
But I'm curious, do you think that playful tone is like a way of downplaying the severity of it?
Possibly. Yeah, it could be like a coping mechanism.
Right.
Like make light of a difficult situation, which, as we've said, is very British.
Yeah, very British for sure. Okay, ready for our next word.
Hit me.
Okay. So this is a word that is a bit of a chameleon. It changes its meaning depending on which side of the pond you're on, and that word is fancy. Fancy, yeah, so in American English, fancy typically means, something elaborate.
Right.
Or upscale, like a fancy dinner or a fancy hotel.
Fancy restaurant. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But in British English, it takes on a whole other meaning.
It does. It has like a secret double life.
Right.
It means to want or to like something. So you might ask a British friend, do you fancy a cuppa?
Do you fancy a cuppa?
Which means, would you like a cup of tea?
Right.
So simple question, but a very different meaning.
Yeah, I'd say yes to that any day of the week.
Exactly.
A cuppa. Okay, on to our next word, another one that showcases the British love for expressive language. This one is chuffed. Chuffed.
Love it.
It's a good one.
Yep.
A good one.
Yep.
It expresses a feeling of great delight or satisfaction.
Yeah, it goes beyond just being pleased.
Right.
It's like absolutely thrilled, over the moon, delighted.
So it's like pleased on steroids.
You could say that, yes, if your British friend says, I'm chuffed to bits about your new job, they're not just happy for you, they're ecstatic.
Yeah, they're like really, really happy for you.
Really, really happy.
Yeah. It's like, I love that it's such a specific word.
It is.
For that very specific emotion.
Yeah, it captures that feeling of pure joy.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some seasonal vocabulary. When those leaves start changing color, and Americans call it fall.
Our British friends call it autumn.
Autumn. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting how those different words evoke different images in my mind.
Right.
Fall feels more crisp
Yeah.
and dynamic, like the leaves are like actively falling.
Yeah.
Whereas autumn has a more mellow, kind of wistful feel to it.
More romantic, maybe.
Yeah. It's really interesting how these subtle differences in wording can like shape our perceptions of the world around us.
Absolutely. It really highlights how language can influence our thoughts and even our emotions.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's explore how Americans and Brits measure time.
Okay.
What do you got for me on this one?
Well, this is a fun one. In British English, they use the word fortnight to denote 2 weeks.
A fortnight.
Yeah. Whereas Americans would simply say 2 weeks.
Right.
Fortnight sounds a little old-fashioned.
Yeah, it does a little bit more literary almost.
Right.
Or historical.
Yeah.
But it's still quite common in British English.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's got a charm to it.
Yeah, like a little nod to a bygone era.
Absolutely.
It's cool. Okay. Let's talk about another area where we see these transatlantic differences, and that is taking a break from work or school.
Okay.
So, Americans go on vacation.
The British go on holiday.
Holiday. Right? Same concept, different word. But it's interesting, this distinction kind of highlights how language evolves. Both words, vacation and holiday, have Latin roots.
Right.
But they've kind of taken on slightly different meanings over time.
They've each gone on their own little linguistic journey.
Yeah.
Reflecting the cultural nuances of their respective countries.
Right. Like the evolution of language.
Exactly. Okay, now we're going to step into a potential minefield of misunderstanding. This is all about wardrobe essentials. What Americans call pants.
The British call trousers.
Trousers. But here's where things get really interesting.
Yes.
In British English, pants typically refer to underwear. So a simple statement like, I need new pants.
Could lead to some very awkward situations.
Oh my God.
If you're talking to someone from the UK.
Like, so you're in London, you're like, I need some new pants. And they're like,
you're looking at you like, what?
Oh.
Yeah. You want to buy new underwear right now?
Like,
so be careful with that one.
be very, very careful.
Stick with trousers if you want to avoid any awkwardness.
Okay, trousers. Got it. Speaking of potentially embarrassing mix-ups, our next word is one that I think Americans need to be extra careful with, and that word is rubber. Now, in British English, this is a simple word. It means an eraser. That thing you use to rub out pencil marks?
Right.
But in American English, rubber has a completely different meaning.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And it's not something we're going to discuss on this show, but...
we'll let your imagination run wild.
Yeah.
But suffice it to say, it's best to stick with eraser to avoid any red faces.
Yes, stick with eraser. Americans, be very, very careful.
Yes.
Our source really emphasizes this. They're like, warning.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears a little bit to places of healing, what we call in American English. A doctor's office in British English is often called a surgery.
A surgery?
A surgery. But here's where things can get a little tricky.
They can.
because in British English, surgery can also refer to the consultation hours at a doctor's office. So you might hear someone say, I'm going to the surgery at 9 a.m. for a checkup.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean they're having a medical procedure.
No, it just means they're going to see their doctor.
Right.
During their consultation time.
Got it.
So again, context is everything.
Yeah.
When it comes to language.
Right. Very, very true. Okay, let's move on to a mode of transportation that helps us conquer those tall buildings. Americans take the elevator.
The British hop in the lift.
The lift, two different words, same vertical journey.
Exactly.
And, this difference, I think, goes way back to the early days of these contraptions. Elevator, with its emphasis on lifting, kind of reflects that American focus on functionality.
Yeah.
Whereas lift, with the more simpler, elegant sound, might reflect a British appreciation for understated design.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it?
It is like the words themselves.
Yeah.
Kind of give you a clue.
They do.
Okay, ready for another housing showdown?
I am.
Okay, in American English, we live in apartments.
Our British counterparts reside in flats.
The flats. So both words paint a picture of, like, a self-contained living space within a larger building.
Right, yeah.
But they do conjure up kind of different images.
They do, don't they?
Like apartment to me feels more modern and spacious.
Modern, spacious, maybe even a little bit luxurious.
Right.
Whereas a flat feels cozier, more intimate.
Right.
Maybe even a little bit quirky.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So apartment might be like a sleek high-rise.
Exactly.
And a flat might be like, charming,
yeah,
older building with character.
A little more character, yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing how these words can carry such nuanced cultural baggage.
They do. It's fascinating.
It is. Okay, speaking of nuanced cultural baggage, let's talk about entertainment.
Okay.
So Americans go to the cinema to watch a movie.
In British English, they go to the cinema to see a film.
A film.
2 words.
Same cinematic experience, but again, they reflect a little bit of a different perspective.
Right.
Like movie emphasizes movement, action. The spectacle of it all.
The entertainment.
Yeah. Whereas film kind of highlights the artistry, the craft.
The medium itself.
Yeah. Like movie is more about the entertainment value.
Right.
And film is more like it's elevated to an art form.
Exactly. And that distinction really speaks volumes about how Americans and Brits approach cinema in general.
It really does. It's really interesting. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about food.
Okay.
When we're craving that restaurant meal,
Yeah.
but we don't feel like dining in,
Right.
Americans order takeout.
The British go for takeaway.
Takeaway. And here's where things can get a little tricky again, because in British English, takeaway can refer to both the food itself and the restaurant that provides it.
Yes.
So you might hear someone say, let's get Indian takeaway. And that could mean either ordering food or going to an Indian takeaway restaurant.
Exactly.
So again,
Context
is everything you got to pay attention
Absolutely.
to those subtle cues in British English to make sure you're on the same page.
Right.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, from bespoke suits to knackered Brits. We've explored some really interesting differences between American and British English, uncovering these hidden layers of history, culture, and humor along the way. And I think it's been fascinating to see how those differences can sometimes lead to miscommunication.
Absolutely.
Or at least a little bit of confusion, but it also makes the learning process all the more interesting.
You've done an excellent job of not just identifying these differences, but also analyzing what they reveal about the two cultures.
Well, I've had a wonderful guide, but we're not done yet.
No, we are not.
There are still more linguistic gems to uncover.
Yes.
So buckle up. Get ready for part 2, where we delve into even more fascinating distinctions, including some surprising transatlantic twists on everyday words and phrases.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good.
You won't want to miss it.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into the wonderfully quirky world of American versus British English.
And I think you'll find these next few examples particularly intriguing.
Oh, good.
We're going to delve into some everyday words and phrases that take on surprisingly different meanings across the Atlantic.
Okay, hit me with those linguistic curveballs.
Yeah.
What's first on our list?
Let's start with something we all do every day walk in American English. We use the sidewalk to get from point A to point B.
But in British English, they stroll along the pavement.
Same concrete path, different terminology.
Right.
And this seemingly simple distinction actually reveals a lot about cultural perspectives in the U.S. The emphasis is on the side as if it's an addition to the road, almost an afterthought.
Right.
But in the UK, the pavement is the main focus, the designated space for pedestrians.
That's a really interesting observation. It makes you wonder if that difference in terminology reflects a broader difference in how pedestrians are viewed or treated in both countries.
It's definitely something to ponder. Okay, let's move on to something that's near and dear to all of us, food, specifically those sweet treats that bring us joy in American English. We indulge in cookies.
While our British friends savor biscuits.
Now, this is where things can get a bit tricky because what Americans call biscuits are more like what the British would call scones.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's a classic case of a transatlantic word swap.
And a potentially confusing one.
Uh-huh.
Especially if you're craving a chewy chocolate chip cookie and end up with a crumbly, buttery scone. Instead, talk about a culinary disappointment.
I know, right? A total letdown. Speaking of potential disappointments, let's move on to another food-related distinction that often causes confusion snacks when we're feeling peckish and want a quick bite. Americans reach for chips.
While the British opt for crisps.
And to make things even more interesting, what Americans call French fries, the British call chips.
That's a total chip swap.
It is, and one that can lead to some amusing misunderstandings, especially when ordering food at a restaurant.
Right. Imagine asking for chips in London, expecting a side of fries, only to be served a bag of what you'd call potato chips.
Exactly, or vice versa.
Oh, man.
It's a good reminder that even seemingly simple words can have very different meanings depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's shift gears and talk about something a bit more practical transportation in American English. We fill up our cars with gas.
While in British English, they top up with petrol.
Same fuel, different terminology.
And this distinction is particularly important if you're ever driving in a foreign country and need to find a petrol station.
Right.
You don't want to end up stranded with an empty tank because you used the wrong word.
That would not be good.
No, not at all. Speaking of transportation, let's talk about those iconic red buses that grace the streets of London. In American English, we'd simply call them buses.
But in British English, they're often referred to as coaches.
Now, this is where things can get a bit confusing because in American English, a coach typically refers to a long-distance bus or a private bus used for tours or sporting events.
Right. Like a tour bus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're in London and someone tells you to catch the coach, they're probably not talking about a luxury tour bus.
Right.
They simply mean to hop on the regular city bus.
Got it. It's all about context.
It is, and it's a reminder that even seemingly straightforward words can have multiple meanings depending on the region and situation.
Okay, let's move on to a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Books. When we finish reading a book, Americans typically return it to the library.
While in British English, they take it back to the library.
It's a subtle difference, but I find it fascinating because it highlights how even simple verbs can vary across regions.
And those subtle variations can sometimes reveal underlying cultural nuances. For instance, the American emphasis on returning might suggest a sense of ownership as if the book is being given back to its rightful place.
Right.
Whereas the British use of taking back might imply a more transactional approach, as if the book is simply being returned to its point of origin.
Like almost like we borrowed it and now we're taking it back.
Exactly. It's like those different verbs offer a glimpse into the unspoken rules and expectations surrounding books and libraries in both cultures.
That's really thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up this segment with a distinction that's particularly relevant in today's digital age. When we want to find information online, Americans typically use Google to search.
While in British English, they often use Google to look something up.
Again, it's a subtle difference, but it reflects how language adapts to new technologies and cultural practices. Search feels more active and directed, like you're on a mission to find specific information.
Right.
While look something up feels more casual, like you're simply browsing for information or clarifying something you're curious about.
And that distinction might reflect a broader cultural difference in how Americans and Brits approach information gathering. It's fascinating food for thought.
It really is. Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground in this segment, from sidewalks and cookies to petrol and coaches. We've explored a wide range of American versus British English variations, uncovering hidden layers of cultural meaning and potential pitfalls for the unsuspecting traveler or language enthusiast.
You've done a fantastic job of not only highlighting these differences, but also prompting us to think critically about what they reveal about the two cultures and how they influence our communication.
Well, having you as my expert guide has made this journey both insightful and enjoyable. But our linguistic adventure isn't over yet, is it?
Not quite. We still have more fascinating distinctions to uncover in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready. Bring on part 3.
Get ready for some even more intriguing and potentially confusing transatlantic twists on everyday words and phrases. Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into American versus British English.
I feel like we've uncovered so many linguistic surprises already,
We have.
but I have a feeling there are still more gems waiting to be discovered.
I think so too. I think so too. So are you ready to wrap up this transatlantic adventure with a bang?
Absolutely. We've explored some fascinating vocabulary variations.
Yep.
But now let's delve into a few more examples that highlight those subtle but significant ways in which American and British English diverge, even in the simplest of actions.
Okay, bring it on. What linguistic mysteries are we unraveling in this final segment?
Well, let's start with something we all do when the temperature drops: bundle up.
Right.
In American English, we put on a sweater when we need an extra layer of warmth.
But in British English, they do in a jumper.
Jumper, same cozy garment, different name.
Right. And that difference in terminology might actually reflect a subtle difference in cultural attitudes toward clothing.
Possibly.
Like sweater emphasizes the practical purpose of the garment, keeping you warm when you sweat.
Right.
But jumper has a more playful, almost whimsical feel to it.
Yeah, like it's meant to make you feel light and bouncy.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that observation. It's amazing how even something as simple as a name for a piece of clothing can reveal these subtle cultural nuances.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
It is. Okay, let's move on to something that's sure to spark some friendly rivalry. The beloved game of soccer.
Oh, yes.
In American English, we call it soccer.
While our friends across the pond simply refer to it as football.
Football. Now, this is a classic example of a transatlantic word swap
It is.
that often leads to some good-natured teasing.
Absolutely. Especially during major sporting events like the World Cup.
Oh, yeah. I can just imagine the banter back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
You call it soccer, we call it football, but we all know who the real fans are.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, we're all united by our love of the game no matter what we call it.
Right.
It's a reminder that even when our words differ, we can still find common ground through shared passion.
Right. Very true. Okay. Speaking of common ground, let's tackle another difference that often trips people up: how we talk about time.
Okay.
So in American English, we might say, I have class this afternoon.
While a British person might say, I have class this evening.
And this is where things can get a little tricky because afternoon and evening don't always have the same boundaries in both varieties of English.
Right.
In general, Americans tend to use afternoon for a broader period of time, extending later into the day than what British English speakers might consider afternoon.
So it's almost like the American afternoon stretches further into the evening hours.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that can definitely lead to confusion if you're trying to schedule something with someone from the UK.
Definitely always best to clarify to avoid any scheduling mishaps.
Right. A good point. Okay, and speaking of potential mishaps, let's delve into the world of higher education, another area where American and British English use different terms for the same concept. So in American English, we attend college after high school.
While in British English, they go to university.
University, same concept, different terminology.
And this distinction can be important when navigating academic conversations or applying to institutions in different countries.
Right.
Imagine telling a British professor that you're applying to college when they're expecting you to say university.
Oops. Yeah, that could be a little awkward.
A little bit, yeah. So it's all about using the right lingo to fit in and avoid those awkward moments.
Right. Very true. Okay, ready for our final linguistic showdown?
I believe so.
All right. Let's explore how Americans and Brits express that feeling of being overwhelmed with work or commitments.
Okay.
In American English, we might say, I'm slammed.
While a British person might say, I'm snowed under.
Snowed under, both expressions convey that sense of being buried under a heavy workload. But they use different imagery to paint that picture.
They do.
I'm slammed. Kind of evokes a sense of sudden impact.
Yeah, like you've been hit with a ton of bricks all at once.
Right, exactly. Whereas snowed under suggests a more gradual accumulation, like you're slowly being buried beneath a growing pile of tasks.
And those subtle differences in imagery can actually reveal a lot about how Americans and Brits approach work and stress.
That's an interesting thought.
It is fascinating how even the simplest of phrases can offer a glimpse into those deeper cultural patterns.
It really is why we've really gone deep on this
Yeah,
journey.
we have.
From sweaters and football to afternoons in universities. We've explored so many fascinating nuances of American versus British English, uncovering these hidden layers of history, culture, and even psychology along the way.
I think it's been a truly enriching exploration.
I agree. I feel like I've gained a whole new level of understanding and appreciation for these two varieties of English.
Me too. It's been fascinating to see how language is more than just a tool for communication. It's a reflection of our cultural values, our historical experiences, and even our individual perspectives on the world.
It really is, and that's what makes the study of language so endlessly fascinating.
Absolutely.
There's always more to discover, more to learn, and more to appreciate.
Always.
So I hope our listeners have enjoyed this deep dive into the wonderfully weird world of American versus British English as much as we have.
I'm sure they have. And remember, the journey of linguistic discovery doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep celebrating the diversity and richness of language in all its forms.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, so anyone out there want to pick up English quick? Like just the bare bones stuff.
Essentials.
Yeah. We found this YouTube video
Oh, yeah.
called 33 Most Useful English Words for Beginners.
Okay.
It's basically like a cheat sheet.
Like a crash course, kind of.
Yeah. For anyone just starting out. You know.
Right. Interesting.
And what's really cool is how they've like grouped these words.
Oh, yeah. How I like categorization.
Yeah.
Keeps things tidy.
So it's like greetings to get you by
Oh, yeah.
everyday nouns and verbs.
So it's like they're building from the ground up.
Yeah. It's like a little survival pack.
Oh, that's interesting.
But for language.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
we're going
cool.
to dive into this and see if they can really pull off this
What
promise.
price is that?
That you can have like basic conversations
Oh, wow.
just from these 33 words.
Okay.
So first up, we have the basics. Greetings. We're talking hello, goodbye, good morning.
The pleasantries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you can't forget please and thank you.
Of course not.
You got to be polite.
Oh, yeah. It's funny how those are like universal. Like no matter what language,
It transcends language.
you've got a way to be polite, to
Yeah.
acknowledge someone.
Mhm.
It's really interesting.
It's more than just the words.
It really is.
You're establishing a connection.
a rapport.
Yeah. Like a thank you can go a long way
Absolutely.
anywhere in the world.
But then the video gets into what they call survival words.
Survival words.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Like imagine you're in a new place.
Okay.
You don't speak the language.
Right.
You need help.
Okay.
So think like yes, no help.
Okay, basic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even like, where is the bathroom?
Oh, yeah.
Essential.
Essential.
I remember being in this market in Morocco.
Oh, wow.
And it was so crowded.
Yeah.
I was completely lost.
Yeah.
And just knowing how to say, where is the bathroom
Yeah.
in like their language
Right.
was a lifesaver.
Oh, yeah. I bet.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing how those like simple phrases
Yeah.
can suddenly feel so crucial.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But the video doesn't stop there.
No, they keep going.
They dive into common nouns
Okay.
like food, money, time.
Hmm.
I mean, we use these all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but are they really the key
That's what I was thinking.
to unlocking deeper conversations like they're suggesting?
Yeah, because I was thinking like,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be more interesting to
Like,
start with verbs?
oh.
Like to describe actions
Okay.
or even feelings,
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt
Okay.
and see where they go with it.
Fair enough. Let's hear them out.
Okay.
All right.
So after nouns,
Mm-hmm.
they move on to verbs.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Eat, drink, go, come,
The action.
all the actions.
Yeah.
And what's really cool
Yeah. What's that?
is they emphasize using different tenses,
Ah.
like went versus going.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something a lot of beginners trip up on.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Because mastering those verb tenses
Yeah.
lets you talk about the past, present, future.
Right.
Adds a whole new dimension to how you express yourself.
It's like time travel.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
language needs more than just actions.
Okay, what else does it mean?
Needs some flavor.
Ah.
Needs some,
spice.
yeah. So that's where adjectives come in,
Right.
according to the video.
Okay.
Words like good, bad, big, small,
Mm-hmm.
all those ways to describe things.
Right.
And inject some feeling into what you're saying.
Inject some emotion.
Yes.
It is fascinating how just one adjective
Oh, yeah.
can completely change the tone of a sentence.
I like that.
Good is fine.
Okay.
But saying something is fantastic or terrible.
Ooh.
Now those words,
Now we're talking.
they pack a punch.
Yeah.
And the video really encourages viewers to explore synonyms like that, to expand their vocabulary.
It's like they're saying,
What are they saying?
like, don't just tell me it's bad.
Right?
Tell me how W bad.
Exactly.
Now, I'm curious. What do you think about their choice of adjectives?
Okay.
Are those really the most essential ones to learn first?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
While those are certainly common, I wonder if prioritizing adjectives related to emotions
Okay.
might be more impactful.
Interesting.
Think about words like happy, sad, excited, scared.
Okay.
Those tap into a deeper level of communication,
Yeah.
allowing you to express how you feel and connect with others on a more personal level.
Yeah, you're right. Those definitely seem more powerful
Yeah,
than big or small.
Yeah.
You put it that way.
for sure.
Okay. So
Okay.
we've got nouns,
Got it.
verbs, adjectives. What's missing?
What is missing?
Questions.
The question mark.
Yes.
Okay.
They're the key to unlocking information.
Right.
And, like the video suggests having deeper conversations.
Okay.
What, where, when, why, how. Imagine trying to navigate a new city without those.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been there.
Oh, yeah.
Not fun,
Yeah.
but it's more than just getting directions.
Right.
Those question words are
Yeah.
the starting point for learning about anything, right?
Yeah,
It's how we satisfy our curiosity,
totally.
explore the world around us.
And just like with the other word categories,
Yeah.
these questions can lead to so many different conversations.
Oh, I bet.
Like just starting with where
Okay.
could lead you to discussions about travel,
Oh, yeah.
history, culture, who knows?
Right.
It's really exciting.
Very exciting.
But before we get too carried away,
Yeah.
let's take a little pause and we'll come back for part 2 of this deep dive.
Sounds good. Welcome back. Ready to go a bit deeper with this idea.
Yeah. Are 33 words really enough for real conversations?
I mean, it's a big claim,
Right.
but
But they're thinking big.
Yeah.
So one thing they emphasize is like context.
context. Okay.
Like just taking the word good can mean so many different things.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It all depends on how you use it.
Right. Good could describe food,
Yeah,
a person's character,
exactly.
even the weather.
Yeah.
Like, it all
You
depends.
can't just memorize definitions.
Right. You got to understand how it works,
Yeah.
how the word functions
In a sentence.
in a real life situation.
Yeah. So that's where practice comes in.
Practice. Okay.
They talk about using these words in everyday conversations.
Right.
Maybe even doing like role play.
Oh, like little scenarios?
Yeah. To get comfortable.
I like that.
I actually did that when I was learning Spanish. It
Right.
felt so silly, but it really helped.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When you use the words in context, you start to
Yeah.
internalize the nuances
Yeah.
and you build confidence.
We get that confidence.
And it doesn't always have to be formal practice either.
Oh, that's true.
They also mention listening for these words,
Okay.
like in real conversations,
Oh, yeah.
like movies or TV shows,
Okay.
like passive learning,
Right.
but you're still absorbing the language.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, we're surrounded by opportunities to learn,
We are,
even when we don't realize it.
all the time.
Speaking of noticing patterns,
Yeah.
I thought it was cool how they broke down the 33 words
Oh, yeah. How so?
into those categories.
Right.
Nouns, verbs, adjectives, and so on.
It's like they're giving you a framework
Yeah.
for understanding how language works.
It's like a little toolbox.
Oh, a linguistic toolkit?
Yeah.
You got your nouns to name things, verbs to describe actions,
Yeah.
adjectives to add detail. And then once you get how those pieces fit together,
Yeah.
you can start building more complex sentences.
It's pretty clever
It is,
when you think about it.
but they don't just leave you with a toolbox.
No, they give you some tips,
Okay.
like
Oh,
for practice.
yeah.
Like using flashcards to test yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking out loud
Uh-huh.
to get the pronunciation down.
Those multisensory approaches are helpful
Yeah.
for language learning. When you engage like multiple senses,
Yeah.
sight, sound, even touch,
Right.
it helps solidify the information.
Okay.
And for those who like a more hands-on approach,
Yeah.
they recommend keeping a journal.
A journal.
Yeah.
How does that work with 33 words?
Well, The idea is to
Yeah.
try to incorporate those words into your entries.
Okay.
Even if it's just like a few sentences.
So you're tracking your progress.
Tracking your progress.
Getting comfortable.
Getting comfortable using the words.
And making it more personal.
Making the learning process more personal.
That's actually a really good idea.
It is.
Yeah, you take the focus off of just memorizing.
Yeah.
And it becomes more creative.
Right. And I bet seeing yourself use those words correctly day after day would be a huge confidence booster.
Absolutely. Confidence is key.
It is.
For language learning.
It's not just about knowing the words.
Yeah.
It's about feeling comfortable using them.
Right.
And that confidence comes from practice, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone and embracing those mistakes.
The mistakes along the way.
Oh, yeah. I used to get so flustered
Oh, yeah.
when I would mess up a word or a phrase.
Yeah.
But now I just laugh it off
That's good.
and keep trying.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah, it's all part of the learning curve.
Every mistake is a learning opportunity.
Right?
It helps you identify where you need to improve,
Yeah.
and it gives you a chance to try again.
Try again.
So don't be afraid to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Make mistakes and have fun with it.
But before we get too carried away
Yeah.
with all this talk of practice and confidence,
Right.
let's take a quick break and come back for the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, we're back and ready for the final part of our deep dive
Right.
into these 33 essential words.
It's amazing how much we've unpacked, even though it seems like a simple concept.
Yeah, when you first look at it, you're like, oh, 33 words.
Yeah.
But we've gone pretty deep.
Yeah. As the video points out, though, this is really just the starting point.
Yeah, it's like they've given us the basic tools.
A foundation.
Yeah. Now it's up to us to build something.
To build on that.
Yeah. And they give us some suggestions
Oh, they do?
for continuing the journey,
Yeah, like what?
like watching movies with subtitles,
Okay.
listening to music,
Yeah.
even reading books.
It's all about immersing yourself in the
Yeah.
language, finding ways to make it a part of your daily life.
Yeah.
The more you expose yourself to English, the more natural it'll become.
That's true. I remember when I was learning Spanish,
Oh, yeah.
I started watching telenovelas
Telenovelas.
with subtitles.
Yeah.
They were so cheesy, but
Oh, right.
really helped me kick up
Yeah.
everyday phrases.
Right. And slang.
Yes.
And it highlights something the video touches on.
What's that?
The importance of paying attention
Yeah.
to how these words are used in different situations.
So it's not just about knowing the definition.
Exactly. It's about how they're used.
Yeah, yeah. How does good change when you're talking about food
Right.
versus someone's personality?
That's a good thought exercise.
Right.
It forces you to think beyond the basic definition. Consider the nuances of how a word can be used.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's developing a deeper understanding
Deeper understanding.
of how language works.
Yeah. And speaking of nuances,
Okay.
I was impressed by how the video encouraged viewers to think about the emotional weight behind certain words.
Oh, yeah, like happy and sad.
Yeah, not just happy and sad,
Yeah.
but all those shades of emotion.
Like
was
delighted versus content.
Yeah, those convey different levels of happiness.
Right.
Exactly. And being able to express
Yeah.
those subtle differences in feeling is a key part of effective communication.
Yeah. It lets you connect
Yeah.
on a deeper level.
Don't just tell me you're happy.
Yeah.
Tell me what kind of happy you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to what we talked about earlier.
What's that?
The power of language.
Oh, the power of language.
To connect us.
To connect.
To understand each other.
To build bridges.
Yes.
It is remarkable when you think about it.
It is.
These 33 words, seemingly so simple,
Yeah.
can unlock a world of communication
And connection.
and connection.
I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up
I think so too.
this deep dive
We've explored these essential words.
from every angle.
Yeah. And it's clear they're much more
Yeah.
than just a list,
More than a YouTube video.
a starting point for a lifelong journey
Ooh, I like that.
of language learning
And discovery.
and discovery.
So now we want to leave you with a thought.
Oh, a thought to ponder
Yes. What are some simple words
in your native language
that are surprisingly versatile?
or essential for communication.
We encourage you to explore those hidden depths.
The magic within the most basic vocabulary.
Thanks for joining us on this linguistic adventure.
Until next time,
Keep exploring.
the power of words.
Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how we love to take those deep dives into all sorts of interesting topics to improve your English.
That's right.
Well, this time, we're all about boosting your vocabulary.
Yeah, we found this awesome guide all about advanced speaking tips in English.
And we're zeroing in on adjectives today.
Powerful adjectives, ones you can really use to make an impression.
Exactly. So get ready to go from good to astounding and pretty to exquisite, because we're going to break down not just what these words mean, but when and how to use them like a pro.
It's going to be good.
Okay, let's jump right in. The first word that caught my eye in this guide is astounding. And they define it as causing amazement, bewildering. But how is that different from just saying something is surprising?
Well, think about it this way. Astounding has this sense of being completely blown away.
Oh, I see.
Like you're just speechless.
Right, like if you saw the Northern Lights for the first time, or, like a massive waterfall.
Exactly. Astounding has this root that goes back to the idea of being stunned or dazed.
Wow, that's a much stronger image than just surprised.
Absolutely. It really amps up the level of amazement.
Okay, I'm sold. Astounding it is. So what about exquisite? The guide says it means extremely beautiful and delicate.
This one is all about refinement.
Refinement.
Yeah. Think about something that's not just beautiful, but like carefully crafted.
Ah, okay.
With incredible attention to detail.
So like a handmade, intricate piece of jewelry.
Exactly. Or a perfectly prepared gourmet meal, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. Those are both definitely exquisite. Okay, next up we have pivotal. The guide says it means of crucial importance in relation to the development or success of something else.
I always think of a hinge when I hear pivotal.
A hinge.
Yeah, like on a door. It's small, but the whole door swings on it, right?
So.
Same with a pivotal moment.
Okay, so it's like that one decision or event that changes everything.
Exactly, like a historical turning point.
Got it. Okay, how about ingenious?
And that's a fun word.
I know, right? It makes me think of some kind of brilliant inventor.
Well, yeah, it implies cleverness, resourcefulness, originality.
So it's not just being smart, it's like coming up with creative solutions to problems.
Exactly. Like, remember when we talked about that guy who built a working airplane out of bamboo?
Oh, yeah. That was amazing.
Totally ingenious, right?
Okay, let's see. What do we have next? Ooh, profound.
This one's deep.
Yeah, deeper than just deep, I think.
Definitely. It's about having a deep and lasting effect on you.
So like reading a book that totally changes your perspective on life.
Exactly. Or having a conversation that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew.
I have had a few of those. All right, diligent. I feel like I don't hear this word enough these days.
It's a good one, though. It really emphasizes steady, earnest, and energetic effort.
So more than just working hard, it's about being dedicated and thorough.
Definitely. Putting in the time and effort to get things done right.
I can appreciate that. Okay, last but not least, we have resourceful.
I think this one is super important, especially today.
I agree. What do you think makes someone truly resourceful?
Well, they're able to think on their feet and find clever ways to solve problems, even when things get tough.
And probably not afraid to try something new.
Absolutely. They can adapt to different situations and use whatever they have at their disposal to make things work.
Like that one friend we all have who can fix anything with duct tape and a paperclip.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Well, we covered a lot of ground today, didn't we? So to wrap things up, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from this deep dive into powerful adjectives?
I think the biggest thing is to just be more aware of the words you're using.
I like that.
Because the right words can have such a powerful impact.
They really can.
Not just on how you express yourself,
but also how people perceive you.
Exactly.
So for all the listeners out there, I have a challenge for you.
Ooh, I love a challenge.
Pick just one of these awesome adjectives we talked about today and try using it in a conversation sometime this week.
Yes.
And just notice how it feels, how it changes things.
I bet you'll be surprised.
Absolutely. And hey, maybe you'll even inspire someone else to up their vocabulary game.
Spreading the word power.
That's what we're all about. All right, everyone. Until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep those conversations flowing.
Bye, everyone.
See you later. Hey, everyone. Welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're talking all about maximizing impact in everyday conversations.
Yeah, using just your words.
Your words, that's right.
So we're going to be taking a deep dive into a guide today called 15 Great Things to Say in Everyday Conversations for Guaranteed Success.
Okay, guaranteed success, huh?
I know, right?
A little bit much.
That title, it's a lot.
Can we really transform our communication with just a few phrases?
Well, that's what we're going to be exploring today, right?
Yeah, is this a bunch of BS or is this actually something?
Well, the guide focuses on simple positive phrases to build stronger connections, make conversations more enjoyable and productive.
I can see how that makes sense.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that run the risk of sounding insincere?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like we're just reading from a script.
Yeah, you don't want to sound robotic or anything.
Right.
But it's more about the intention behind the words.
Okay.
Like, think about it.
Yeah.
When someone asks you, how are you today? But you can tell they're not really listening. It feels impersonal, right?
Cold.
So it's all about being present in the moment.
Okay. So you're saying like...
Contact, listen attentively, be genuinely curious.
So it's not the words themselves. It's more about just being an active listener.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the guide suggests phrases like, that's a great point, or could you tell me more about that?
So just acknowledging what someone is saying can go a long way.
Yeah, it shows you're not just waiting for your turn to speak, you're
Right.
actually engaged.
It makes them feel heard.
Yeah, and that can deepen the connection between people.
You know, that actually reminds me of a conversation I had recently with a friend who was telling me about their trip to Italy.
Oh, nice.
And they mentioned something that just sounded really interesting.
Okay.
And I just said, could you tell me more about that?
Yeah.
And it just opened up this whole conversation.
And what happened?
It was amazing. They just lit up and told me all these incredible details about food, the art, the people they met. It went from like a simple exchange to like this really memorable conversation.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I really think that just that one question just like made all the difference.
Yeah, so a well-placed question can unlock a treasure trove of information.
That's a great way to put it, a treasure trove.
Yeah.
But I do want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
Couldn't these phrases also be used manipulatively?
Yeah, you're...
But what if someone is just trying to sound more likable to get something they want?
Well, I think most people are pretty good at detecting when someone is being fake.
Okay, so authenticity is key here.
Right, exactly.
All right, so we've talked about active listening, asking engaging questions.
Yes.
But the guide also talks about validation and appreciation. Things like, I appreciate your help, or I trust your judgment.
Yeah, those are good ones.
Those convey a deeper level of respect, right?
Yeah, like you're acknowledging the other person's expertise.
Their autonomy. So again, it's not just saying the words, it's about understanding the deeper impact of those words.
Absolutely.
Like when you tell someone, I trust your judgment, it really empowers them.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a situation where someone said that to you?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What happened?
I remember when I was trying to choose between 2 job offers,
Oh, wow, yeah.
and one of my mentors said those exact words to me, and it really gave me the confidence to make a decision.
So simple words can have a profound impact.
Totally.
But do you ever find it awkward to use these phrases?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah,
And that's where I think practice comes in.
absolutely.
It's not about becoming a robot.
No.
It's about incorporating these phrases into our natural communication style.
Right, and I think that's what makes this so fascinating. We're not just learning a set of magic words.
Right.
We're actually exploring human interaction.
Okay, so we've talked about active listening,
Yeah.
asking engaging questions, expressing validation and appreciation. Seems like we're building a foundation for better conversations.
They are.
Now, as we move forward, we're going to be getting into empathy and support. And I'm curious to hear if any of these ideas resonate with you so far.
Yeah, me too. Have you had any experiences where a simple phrase made a difference in a conversation?
You know, that's a great question, and I'm sure our listeners have some stories to share as well, but we'll have to save that for later. So we talked about active listening, asking insightful questions, and expressing validation. But I'm curious about offering empathy and support.
Yeah, for sure. And the guide highlights phrases like, I completely understand. That must have been difficult. And I'm proud of you.
You know, I can see how those phrases can be really helpful, but I'm also wary of saying, I completely understand.
Yeah.
When I don't fully grasp what someone is going through.
Yeah, I totally get it.
It almost feels presumptuous.
It's about acknowledging their feelings, even if you can't relate to their specific situation.
Okay, so it's more about validating their emotions than claiming to have walked in their shoes.
Exactly.
I think sometimes we're so afraid of saying the wrong thing that we end up saying nothing at all.
Yeah, and silence can sometimes be interpreted as indifference.
Right.
Even a simple phrase like, I'm here for you, can be incredibly powerful.
You know, that phrase reminds me of a time when I was going through a really tough breakup, and a friend of mine just sat with me and listened patiently.
Oh, wow.
And at one point she just said, I'm here for you.
And how did that make you feel?
You know, it was so simple, but it meant the world to me.
It's a reminder that you're not alone in your struggles.
Exactly.
Well, what's interesting is that empathy actually has a neurological basis.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're telling me that empathy isn't just a feeling?
No.
It's an actual phenomenon.
Yeah, our brains actually mirror the emotions that we see.
So when we see someone experiencing an emotion, our brains are kind of experiencing that same emotion.
On a neurological level, yeah.
That's fascinating.
And that's why expressions of empathy can be so powerful in building trust.
So we're literally on the same wavelength.
Yeah, you could say that.
Now I'm wondering, can we train ourselves to become more empathetic?
Research suggests that we can.
Wow. So by using these phrases, we're not just improving our communication, but actually rewiring our brains?
It's a win-win.
And now that I think about it, the title of this guide, Guaranteed Success, still feels strong, but I can see how using these phrases consistently can lead to more positive outcomes.
Well, the success isn't about getting what you want from every conversation.
Right.
It's about having healthier relationships and becoming a better communicator.
Well, the guide also talks about compliments and encouragement.
Oh, yeah.
Phrases like, you're really good at that, you handled that really well, you've made a lot of progress.
Those are great examples, but just like we talked about earlier, authenticity is key. You want to be genuine in your praise.
No backhanded compliments
No.
or forced compliments.
Yeah, and you also want to tailor the compliment to the person you're talking to.
That's a good point. Some people don't like to be praised publicly.
They might find it embarrassing. So it's all about reading the room.
I'm thinking about the phrase, you've made a lot of progress.
Uh-huh.
That one seems really effective when someone's working hard to improve.
It acknowledges their effort and encourages them to keep going.
Exactly like when you were first learning to play the piano.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, you play the piano?
I dabble. I'm certainly no concert pianist.
But you remember struggling with a difficult piece.
Yeah, and my teacher said to me, you've made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
It kept me motivated to keep practicing.
So it's those little moments that can make a big difference.
Right. Whether it's learning a new skill, navigating a personal challenge, or just getting through a tough day.
So communication isn't just about conveying information.
No.
It's also about building connections, fostering trust, and inspiring each other.
Exactly.
So the 15 phrases for guaranteed success might not guarantee success, but it highlights how small changes in our communication can have a big impact.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about active listening, empathy, compliments.
We have.
But there's one last piece of the puzzle I want to discuss, and that's practice.
Yeah, practice is essential, just like any skill.
We're not going to magically become master conversationalists overnight.
No, it takes time and effort.
So it's about incorporating these phrases into our daily lives.
Yeah, what if you picked 1 or 2 phrases from the guide each week?
I love that idea.
And just focus on using them.
It's like a little experiment.
It is.
And who knows, maybe by the end of this deep dive, our listeners will have their own set of phrases that they like to use.
That would be great, because ultimately the goal is to use language in a way that feels authentic to you.
So what are some of the phrases that you personally find most effective?
Well, I'm a naturally curious person, so I often find myself using phrases like, like I was saying, I'm a naturally curious person.
Right.
So I often find myself using phrases like, tell me more about that, or that's really interesting, could you elaborate?
I like those.
It helps me stay engaged and learn more about the other person.
And it shows that you're genuinely interested in what they have to say.
Exactly.
So it's like we're not just talking at each other. We're actually have a dialogue.
We're building that connection.
I love it. And I think that's what makes communication so fascinating.
It is. It's complex.
It's this dance between listening, speaking, understanding, and responding.
It's more than just words.
It's about creating a space where both people feel comfortable and respected.
So when we use phrases like the ones in this guide, we're setting the stage for more authentic and meaningful conversations.
Yeah, and I think that's a much better definition of guaranteed success.
It's not about manipulating people.
Right.
It's about fostering genuine connections.
And I think that's something we can all strive for.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this exploration of everyday phrases,
what are some key takeaways that our listeners can implement in their own lives?
well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that we all have the power to make a positive impact through our words.
I agree with that.
It's not about being a perfect communicator.
Yeah.
It's about being mindful and present in our interactions.
And being willing to practice.
Exactly. And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning.
It is.
The real learning happens when we start putting these ideas into practice.
And I have a feeling that if we all make a conscious effort to use our words more thoughtfully,
we can create a ripple effect of positivity.
And that's something worth striving for.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep those conversations flowing and those connections strong.